Hello, and welcome to my first arena deck tech. I know, I hated arena at first, and now I'm making deck techs about it. Look at me, I'm a hypocrite. Who cares? But to get right into it, this is a Cavalcade of Calamity deck, which is a red enchantment that came out in Ravnica Allegiance, and we'll get to that in a second. But first, before we begin, I gotta shout out all the other Cavalcade of Calamity decks that some of my fellow content creators have made, so you can go check them out. John Dunning over at They Said We Said, great guy, made a red-white Cavalcade deck. It's awesome. Jason Stoops over on the Aether Hub made a red-black Cavalcade deck. Again, super awesome. Warlord Hank over at Cardboard Paladins made a red-blue Cavalcade deck. Again, wonderful. And Matt across the pond over at Total MTG made a red-green Cavalcade deck. And like all the others, it's amazing and they're all really fun. So you can go check them out. The links are down below. But like every group, there is always a black sheep. And usually that black sheep does something stupid. And the black sheep of this group is me. So here is my Cavalcade deck, Walls of Calamity. Now forget the regular deck tech intro and all that shit. This is arena. We need something extreme.
Walls of Calamity.
Okay, maybe that was a bit much. So this deck centers around two enchantments, Cavalcade of Calamity and High Alert, which means it's a 3-color deck, red, white, blue. Cavalcade says whenever a creature you control with power 1 or less attacks, Cavalcade deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker that creature is attacking. And High Alert makes all of our creatures assign combat damage equal to their toughness instead of their power. Our creature with Defender can attack as though they didn't, and we can untap a creature for 2 white and blue. Either of these enchantments can win us a game if they're unanswered, but they also work together because High Alert doesn't change a creature's power, it just changes how it's assigned. So if a 1/4 creature attacks, it'll still trigger Calamity, but the damage will be dealt as though we're attacking with a 4/4 creature. So it's a nice little synergy we got there. But what creatures are we using exactly? Well, we're using creatures that are thick. Nightveil Sprite is a 1/2 flyer that allows us to surveil on attack and dig for our enchantments. Omen Speaker is a 1/3 that allows us to scry for our enchantments when it comes into play. Sailor of Means is a 1/4 that gives us a treasure token when it comes in, and that token can be used to fix our mana or ramp us in the next turn. But the real powerhouse of this deck is Surgemare, a 0/5 that can't be blocked by green creatures. When it deals damage, we can draw a card and discard a card, and we can also pay 1 and a blue to give it +2, -2 until end of turn. That allows for some nice combat tricks when we don't have High Alert out. It makes Surgemare a tricky creature to block that most opponents will just let through. Our last creature is Tetsuko, and she makes all of our creatures with power or toughness 1 or less unblockable. So all our creatures in our deck. Remember, High Alert doesn't change power, so Tetsuko essentially makes a Surgemare an unblockable 5/5. But now I know what you're thinking. Hey, how is this Walls of Calamity if there are no fucking walls? Well, I just like the name. Plus with walls in the name, I can make all types of jokes about, no, fuck it. We're not going there. Too easy. I have pride in my comedy and those jokes are just too easy nowadays. Moving on. Opposed to most Cavalcade decks, which are aggro based, we are more of a tempo deck. Our big butt creatures can block early game damage until we find the pieces we need, and Charter Course allows us to dig for those pieces. With our Surveil and Scry creatures, we can usually sculpt the cards off the top of the deck that we're going to draw and pick and choose what we want. So that's kind of nice. We can also disrupt our opponent with a few counter spells we have. We have 2 negates and a single quench. Quench is essentially reserved for our opponent's big tap out spells, and negates are mostly there to fight Settle the Wreckage. Speaking of Settle the Wreckage, we run 2 in our deck. It's hard not to run this card when we're playing white, and it's especially great in our deck where we can swing in unblockable and then survive the crackback on our opponent's turn. Finally, we have 2 Lava Coils as a way to interact with troublesome creatures that hit the board, and 3 Dive Downs that actually serve 3 purposes in this deck. First one being that it gives hexproof to our creatures, so we can use it to fizzle kill spells. Second, it gives +3 to our creature toughness, so they can survive damage-based board wipes or survive chump blocking. And third, it's actually a buff in this deck. Because we're attacking with our butts, Dive Down can actually sneak in an extra 3 points of damage. The land base for the deck is kind of pricey. Because of our 3 colors, we have to have our mana fixing. So we're running 3 Hollowed Fountains and 2 Steam Vents for our shock lands. And then we have 2 Glacial Fortresses, 2 Sulphur Falls, and a Clifftop Retreat for our check lands. And they normally come in untapped thanks to our shocks. For basics, we're running 7 islands, 2 mountains, and 2 plains for a total of 21 lands. And that's the deck. But this deck was made for best of 1 arena play. But if you want a sideboard, I made one up quickly so you can pick and choose the pieces out of this if you want to try to make this viable. We got 2 Deputy of Detentions to deal with non-land permanents, especially against decks that run playsets of cards, and 2 Honor Guards to deal with enter the battlefield effects like Explore triggers and Ravenous Chupacabra, annoying stuff. Also, as both of the creatures are 1/3s, they work with both High Alert and Cavalcade and Tetsuko, so there's synergy there. We have more counter spells in Disdainful Stroke, 2 Essence Scatters, and another Negate. These, along with the ones in the main board, allow you to tailor your deck depending on what your opponent is playing. If they're playing more creatures or less creatures, you have all types of counters to work with. Entrancing Melody can be used to gain control of opponent's creatures, but let's be honest, we're just using it because you can steal a fat-ass Hydroid Krasis for only 4 mana, and that's pretty sick. Unbreakable Formation is essentially a counter to board wipes, gives all our creatures indestructible, or it can be a one-sided board wipe. If we swing into a pile of creatures, we can kill all their creatures and ours survive. We don't really want the addendum effect because +1/+1 counters on our creatures put a lot of them outside of the range of Tetsuko's unblockable ability and the Cavalcade, so that's not really what we're aiming for. Finally, we have a Lava Coil to bring in for more removal, and 3 Fiery Cannonades which deal 2 damage to each non-pirate creature. Basically, all our creatures will survive this hit, and it's a one-sided board wipe against mono blue tempo and white weenie decks. So that's nice. And that's my janky arena deck. If you like it, like, sub, comment, share, etc. All that good shit. I'm going to make some gameplay videos about this deck because I love playing it. And so far it's been pretty good. It has around a 70% win rate as a record in best of 1, and it's fun to play, which is truly priceless in my opinion. So let me know what you think about the deck down below. Check out all those other Cavalcade decks I mentioned above, and keep having fun. I'll see you next time, guys.